Okay, you have your apples, and you're going to add your sugar and your flour and the nutmeg. And the cinnamon. And then I like to start putting it in this measuring cup, the liquid measuring cup, and stirring it around a little bit until I get it pretty well measured, or excuse me, pretty well mixed. And then I dump it into the mixing bowl so I can make sure all the apples are really well coated. And if you're using frozen apples, it's going to look a little different and they're going to be a little more mushy than these. These are fresh apples. Okay, next you're going to take your pie crust, and it doesn't really matter how much you roll, but I would start with small amounts. And you're going to just shape it. Doesn't have to be a perfect circle this time because we are going to use a little small template to cut the correct size for the muffin tins. And you should have it about 1/4 of an inch thick. I think I got mine a little bit too thin, but remember you can just feel around the edges at the edge of the dough to see how thick it is, and then push or pull the dough to where you need it thicker. And then you'll just try to make the most of your dough, so obviously use the corners of the dough to fit as many in as you can, because you don't want to have to roll the dough too many times. And your muffin tins, you can give them a little squirt of vegetable spray or rub a little vegetable oil in there. Not much though. And then I use a spatula to get these off, and try not to squish them, because when they squish up smaller then they don't fit the muffin tin very well. And they're also pretty thin, so be really careful when you're pushing them down so you don't get a hole. If you happen to poke a hole in the crust, just grab a little piece from the leftovers and patch it. But try to get the crust up to the edge of the muffin tin. And you're going to keep doing this and take away your little scraps because we're going to roll them again. I was able to get 17 mini pies out of one pie dough recipe. So you're shooting for somewhere around in there. To make your crumble, you're going to add your brown sugar, your flour, and your oats. And your cinnamon. And mix this up first. Just stir it around so it's all blended. Oh, and salt too. And then once you get it blended pretty well, Then you're going to take your butter. It should be somewhat soft, not melted though. And you guys will have pastry cutters, which I will show you, but I don't have one at home, so I'm just going to use this spatula. But you want to go ahead and mix the butter in the best you can. And it'll be much easier with a pastry cutter. So you might have some little pea-sized clumps of butter, that's okay, but just get it pretty well smashed in and blended. And finally, you get to put the apples in. Yours should be easier because you used frozen apples, and these fresh apples aren't quite as bendable, and so they don't fit as well. But try to pack as many in as you can and make sure that they get down to the bottom of the crust. And if you have to cut some up, that's okay. And also, if you can, try not to spill all over the muffin tin. It'll make cleanup way easier. Okay, now you can take the crumble, and I did it with a measuring cup, but what I found later was it's really easy to take about a tablespoon or maybe a heaping tablespoon and dump on top of the apples and then press it down with your hand. It just is a little neater and you don't spill as much on the outside of the muffin tin. So it'll kind of pack down because of the apple in there. Sorry, not the apple, because of the butter. And then it'll definitely cook up when you put it in the oven, so it's a little bit crispy, but right now it's still a little crumbly. And again with this, make sure you clean off the muffin tin when you're finished, because it'll cook on and make a real mess, and that's not going to be any fun to clean up.